time you're joining us, welcome to K&A Table, where we discuss matters politics, matters governance, as well as the state of the nation. What is happening in our country, Kenya? Who did what, where, when, why, and how? And of course, how much more or less is the government going to spend, or how much more or less is the taxpayer going to incur? Obviously, I'm joined by Emmanuel Bosire, who is our analyst and will help us analyze some of the stories that we are discussing today. And most definitely, the comment section is very much open. Feel free to give us your comments as well as your contributions to the topics that we are discussing. And we're looking forward to having a blissful discussion right here on the K&A table. So starting us off, of course, the long wait has finally come to an end or has arrived. And this is because Kenyans were actually eagerly waiting to know what is going to happen in the fuel sector, if the price of fuel is going to be reduced or if the price of fuel is actually going to increase. And as per an April announcement, diesel is going to be sold or retailed at 203.47 shillings. We have kerosene retailing at 203.06 shillings. That is a reduction of the two, that is diesel and kerosene, by 2 shillings each. But the price of petrol has actually remained unchanged and still stands at 217.36 shillings. Emmanuel, is this good news for Kenyans? A reduction by 2 shillings in the fuel price?
It's a significant change, and the margin can seem to be small, but it's important. First, from the pressure that the president has been getting, and by that of petrol remaining constant. So meaning there are things that shows that they're working about it. So Kenyans can have a small joy about it.
And with this small change, might that actually bring change to what Kenyans are calling the cost of living, or we still have a really long way to go?
No, we cannot basically say that we have a long way to go when we see things moving. No. At times media can make the government seem not to be working. First, we've seen the price of unga coming down. We've seen again the price of diesel and kerosene coming down and petrol remaining. So this gives an indication that the government is really working out to solve the issue of cost of living, now that it's the main thing that it's focusing to change. Once you know your enemy and you know how to conquer your enemy, first by identifying the enemy, then you look on strategies on how to conquer the enemy. So the Kenya Kwanza government has looked into the challenges that Kenyans are facing, and then they're also seeing the time factor. Time always keeps on moving. So instead of dwelling on blame games, dwelling on complaints, dwelling on other things, they've tried and they're working out. They have made system in place. And I think for the next 1 to 2 years, things will be okay, unless if another emergency does not come out. Yeah.
And speaking obviously of the cost of living, speaking of fuel, we had the president, that is William Ruto, today actually link the high cost of living to the security state, of course, in the Middle East. Now, let's just listen to President William Ruto, and then we'll be right back.
Economy of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we have already stated, as people from this region, the war in Ukraine has created a very dire situation in the East Africa and in the whole region of Africa, because 3 things have happened. Number one, commodity prices have escalated because of the war, whether you're talking about fertilizer, whether you're talking about grains. And as a result of the war, we have a serious situation of escalating prices of food items. And That has resulted in higher costs of living in our continent, with very detrimental effects on populations, on people, especially those that are vulnerable. And as a result, it has led to a second thing, that we are now spending more money in supporting communities, supporting the agricultural sector. We're investing more money in subsidizing fertilizer for food production, fertilizer that is already very high in costs. And that is why, as a continent, we believe in a peaceful resolution of these issues and an early engagement to resolve the conflict is a most desired outcome for those of us from this region. It is the reason why we believe in a rules-based world. We believe in the Charter of the UN that respects the territorial integrity of countries and that believes that aggression against any country globally is aggression against all countries. And we're looking forward to an early and speedy resolution of the conflict in Ukraine, as we do in Gaza and as we do in the rest of the conflicts that we have in our own continent. Thank you very much.
România este clar cel mai important culoar de export pentru produse.
Yes, so that was the President, William Ruto, actually relating the cost of living or the bad economic times to the Ukraine war. Now, to the Ukraine war. What is your opinion in regards to the President's sentiments? Linking the high cost of living in Africa generally, just narrowing it down to Kenya, to this war that is happening. Does it really have that big an impact on the cost of living or the cost of commodities in Africa and Kenya?
Yeah, it can be true, when a war comes or when we have an instance where we have two major countries fighting. It's not a war between Kenya and maybe Tanzania. It's not a war between African countries. It's not a war between small countries. No. These are two superpowers, actually. After US, Ukraine, and Russia come in. No. So this war in Ukraine attracts interest by the superpower. So you find out that the imports that Ukraine and Russian governments make is from African countries, maybe Kenya in particular. So you find out that by this war, the importation for them is going to be limited. And when the importation is going to be limited, you find out that the country now that is exporting commodities to their country, it becomes a problem. When we talk about the exportation, we find out that the commodities that they give out to other countries, maybe in terms of grants and levies and maybe loans, is not being taken out again now that there's war. So when you see all those, and majority of it, it's oil and fuel, so you find out that the shift in the market prices is also going to make a shift to be shared globally by the all markets, even the domestic markets and for local governments like Kenya. So this war can have a significant effect in everything. So, and again, it can come with advantages and disadvantages, but most comes with disadvantages. So just like we've seen, and people are trying to look on alternatives to avoid the rush into Ukraine, to look for other means, maybe USA, look for China, let's get South Koreans, let's maybe move to Indonesia. So by shifting all this, you find out that as a country, maybe as Kenyans, we're able to move on with life, and the cost of living can be bearable to our Kenyans. So the president, at times, the opposition can keep on keeping the government, but at times, as a government, you must carry the blame because you are in government and people have given you hope to deliver on their behalf. So you need to look for strategies on how to counter the effects that's being brought by any war. Just like Israel and the Palestine have also posed another serious problems to international markets. So you find out that there are countries who have been solely depending on Israel. So when you depend on a country and they go into a war, just like maybe here in East Africa, it's we Kenyans were considered to be one of the most developed countries. So wherever we have a war, maybe just like we had the 2007-2008 post-election violence, so it posed a lot of problems, not only to we as Kenyans, but to our neighboring countries. But again, we thank the Lord that the government has realized other alternatives that can be taken to make sure that the cost of living for Kenyans has been improved, and something different can be found out of it. And even as we see how it will end, yeah.
But we've seen other Kenyans, or no, we've seen Kenyans actually express their displease with the current government. From time to time, we've had the bad economic state of Kenya, or bad things that are happening in the Kenyan economy being linked, number one, as you stated, one, to the Israel-Hamas war. We have the issue of drought. We have the issue of subsidies. We have the issue of tax evasion. These are some of the things that have actually been mentioned. We have the issue of the handshake brothers that keeps on coming up. We also have the issue of the government asking for more time. So the question out here also is, of course, yes, you said in one way or another, the Ukraine war is linked to the difference in either growth or the downfall of different economies in the world at large. But when you narrow down like to a country like Kenya, with all the things that I have mentioned, is it that the government is finding more excuses as to why they cannot probably create a conducive environment for the common wananchi, or mama mboga as they put it? Or on the other hand, can we say that the government does not actually have control, or that large percentage of control over what is happening in the country?
One, the government is in action. Not that the government is not in action. By the moment that it realizes that they know that Kenyans are the main complaint that Kenyans are giving out each day is all about the cost of living. So once they come and identify the problem, problems can be inherited. And one of the problems that the Kenyan government has been facing is the problem of inheriting unfinished projects. You find out that the challenges of administration and governments. So you find out that the former governments, maybe the government of Uhuru let me start by Moi, did not finish up paying some of their debts, and they forwarded them to the government of Mwai Kibaki. And some of Mwai Kibaki also forwarded to Uhuru Kenyatta. And then Uhuru forwarded them maybe to President William Ruto. So when you find out that these problems have accumulated, maybe the problems of corruption, they never put in a system that was making sure that corruption was no more. They never placed a system in governments whereby Kenyans are able to depend majority of their make majority of their livelihood here in country. So when you inherit problems, maybe even in families, anywhere, even in a company you are coming in. So one of the big challenges that you want to face in as new administration is first, how will you cope up with these burdens that you inherited? So these problems that President William Ruto is saying, they can be true at times. Like when you have opposition, just like what Uhuru Kenyatta did by taking opposition and bringing them into governance, just like Mwai Kibaki did to civil servants and the church. So by taking the church, which should be the watchdog for all the ills that the government does, Mwai Kibaki decided to bring the church into governance, something that the church has been unable to remove itself from. So you find out again that the church, the governments Mwai Kibaki never accepted the civil servants. And that's why we've seen the Atuod is serving in one seat for more than a decade. And other people are able to do that. So these problems, like I've just said, that it can be true that the government can inherit problems from previous governments, but now it's your problem now, it's your responsibility. And that's why Kenyans believed in the leadership of William Ruto and voted in him. So by that, you identify the burdens that you were left by the previous government.
No.
So when the previous government left you the burdens, you've identified them. What next do you need to do? You also need to play a game in where you want to solve these problems. Those ones that you're able to solve will work for your advantage. Just like telling Kenyans, I came into governance and they're saying that they never found any money. So they were giving promises expecting that they will come and get something in their account. While the handshake brothers worked out to see that the account was empty. So by that, it posed a very big disappointment to them. But they've taken time. They have made sure that the government account also, money is coming in, money is going out. So they have been able to solve such problems. So when they've solved, they are on moving. Just like we've seen, the prices for unga, they are relatively affordable at the moment. So we cannot compare them when it was 230 during the handshake in COVID with now 145 shillings.
Why is that 145 shillings?
This is the problem that we have with you media.
But you are part of us.
No,
We're
I'm
just
not part of
asking,
you.
what is that?
The problem is,
I'm asking this as a Kenyan.
Kenyans today are purchasing at 145.
Where?
I just bought one in supermarket.
Unless
Just
it's on
go.
offer.
No, not on offer. That's the price at the moment. Goro one in Kisi market, Darajambili, goes at 130 shillings, 2 kgs. So we need to have this agreement that the government is still working out to make sure that the Kenyans are coming out. Just like we've seen leaders coming out from both parties, Kenya Kwanza and opposition, telling the government, slow down, other things must wait. Just like adding on the government services, ID replacement, affidavit, and many others. So you're finding out that the government is continuing in solving these problems. And just like anything, things take time. We can say things are not working in 3 months. We can say things are not working in 6 months, in maybe 1 year. But the next year, you just see a development. Just like all the governments, the former government. No government in history has ever delivered in its manifesto for the first 3 months. 3 to 6 months, no government, including the USA government. They've never delivered on the first 100 days. Because the first 1 year actually in office is when you want to see how things are run in that office, what is done here, what's done there, and you're coming again with another new strategy on how you feel you as a current leader things should be moving on. So by the time you settle down with your administration, it could have taken you time. But the next 2 or 3 years before maybe you move to the next elections, you could have worked. Yeah, unless if President William Ruto is not interested in 2027, I'm sure he will not deliver. But because I'm sure he's an ambitious leader who wants to stay in that power maybe for eternity, I'm kidding. He can deliver for the next 2 or 3 years just so to convince voters again, come 2027 to re-elect him.
So you're also part of that statement, give us time. Or give the government time.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Government needs time. Yeah.
Okay. And so viewers, which of this do you actually agree with, or which of this do you think is actually fit? Giving the government time, or better yet, finding other means to solve the issues that are affecting Kenyans? Now, Emmanuel, you talked about inheriting certain things, of course, from previous regimes, including the economic state, including debt and all that. And we know what has happened twice in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, which is one of the, of course, airports in Kenya that accepts international flights, and the only one in Nairobi as yeah. And we know that some days back there was a blackout, a nationwide blackout, which is not the first time that a blackout has happened affecting Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And there's also this video that surfaced of leaking roofs, or leaking roof of in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Hey, the gods want to take away my words, yeah. But a leaking roof in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And while the CS Murkomen was actually addressing this particular issue, he linked it to something or inheritance from the previous regime. Let's just listen to CS Murkomen and we'll be right back.
Ningependa kutangazia wananchi kwamba tulipofika ofisi kama wizara na serikali tulipata kwamba uwanja zetu nyingi zimeachwa na projects mingi ya airport imeachwa nyuma sana. Kwa mfano huko Nairobi tulipata kwamba ile renovation ilikuwa kwa JKIA, Terminal 1C, Terminal 1E, 1A, 1B. Tunaona kwamba aswa kwa sababu watu wengi waliona ile uwanja ilivuja jana wakati ilinyesha mvua kwa wingi, ni kwa sababu ile renovation ilifanywa kwa Terminal 1C na E ilifanywa kwa nia ya kwamba hiyo uwanja sehemu hiyo ingevunjwa na ijengwe kitu ilikuwa inaitwa infill project. Haikufikia ile kiwango inahitajika kwa mambo ya projects. Ndio unaona JKIA tuko na shida ya mambo ya stima. Mliona kwamba nilijaribu kusuluhisha mambo ya generator. Juzi bado tulipata shida ya giza, lakini ilichukua muda mfupi kuliko kabla hatujafanya mabadiliko. Nimeambia KA pia wafanye mabadiliko zaidi, na ule contractor ako site ameshaweka generator, lakini ameenda polepole akisingizia kwamba angeenda kwa mwendo wa kasi ingeleta shida, kwa sababu pia ingeharibu network zingine za stima yenye ilikuwa kwa airport. Nimesema hata kama ni kuongeza makontrakta wengine, lazima tutafute uwezo zaidi kuhakikisha tumerekebisha mambo ya stima once and for all. Hiyo 20 minutes hiyo excuse ile ya kusema ilikuwa tutakika 20 ni nyingi sana. Tunataka interchange ya generator ikuwe automatic. Sekundi 30 ndio tunaweza kukubali. Zaidi ya hiyo ni kulegea kazini. Ile infield terminal hapo nimesema KA wahakikishe wamerekebisha, na ule contractor na engineers walisimamia kazi hiyo lazima wajibike. Kweli wa mambo, ile scope ya kazi ilifanywa aje mpaka kwamba ikinyesha zaidi ile airport inavuja. Na kwa sababu hiyo ninangojea ripoti ya KA, lakini tayari ule MD wa KA ameniambia leo amefanya mkutano na ule contractor, na wiki huu lazima marekebisho imefanywa leo, ilifanywa jana usiku na leo kwa yale yalitokea, lakini marekebisho zaidi yafaa kufanywa kuhakikisha kwamba ile kazi walianzisha wamemaliza vizuri. Lakini kusema ukweli, hatuwezi kuendelea na hiyo airport vile ilivyo. Tangu ichomeke imekuwa ni airport imeleta shida, hata ile renovation imefanywa imeleta shida. Tumesema tuko na mpango ya kujenga airport mpya. Ile inaitwa new terminal kwa upande ya greenfield yenye iko upande ule. Tayari tuko na feasibility study, kandarasi ya PPP project inaanza Januari, na rais amesema kwa miaka mitatu sisi lazima tukue tumedeliver before 2027 a complete new airport ambayo tunajenga kupitia ile mpango ya kushirikiana na wanabiashara ama wawekezaji wa kibinafsi, ile inaitwa private sector. Wao wanafanya ile inaitwa PPP, ushirikiano ya private sector na sisi wananchi wa serikali kuhakikisha kwamba
Yeah, so those are Murkomen's words, of course, in regards to the power outage that affected JKIA, that is on Saturday. And part of what we're hearing from Murkomen is that the inheritance bit is actually coming in, you know. But Kenyans, for example, are asking this question. You have come into the system, as you stated earlier, or you have found that this is the issue that is there with the system. It's not the first time the issue is happening. Why not solve this particular problem, especially because it's a technical problem? It's not like it's a dead problem and all that. But again, Murkomen is actually commended. At least this time round, it has taken, it took 20 minutes for the generators to actually operate. But in such a country like Kenya, why are we at a place where these are the kind of problems that we're supposed to be dealing with?
Just like he himself has said that the government is very keen now with the problems that have befall JKI under the new administration. The first one, we saw Kipchumba Murkomen running there. And you know what he did? He sent someone home. So I was expecting the recent one that is going to send someone home. At times, things don't need immediate action. So when you send someone home, who at times could not be the main source of that problem, it becomes a betrayal to what we have employed our workers to work on. But truth be told, the former regimes, someone can ask, where President Uhuru Kenyatta and others, why did they not have backup generators in the international airport? And then we want to burden President William Ruto, who is now 1 year in office, to do that other regimes could have done. If you want to be the best principal in a school, this I'm buying it from philosophy of education, and you move to somewhere, a new school, and you see the culture of this school does not perform, you need to work as fast as possible and change the gate of that institution. So that parents and the community will say that we have a working principle. So the problem as before President William Ruto, at the expense of what Uhuru Kenyatta could have done. First, during that time, Kenyatta had time. COVID came during the second term, almost to the end of his term. Mwai Kibaki did his best. And maybe the priority of Mwai Kibaki then was superhighways. The priority of Uhuru Kenyatta then was what? Food security. And now you find that President William Ruto is finding a lot of challenges. First, with high cost of living. Kenyans have out-voted. The opposition with Uhuru Kenyatta never believed that William Ruto made it as a president. The first 5 months, actually, they never even recognized him as the president. It was all over tension. And then the 6th month, it was demonstration all over the country. Almost 1.5 months, demonstrations. And then from there, we're coming and finding these problems. The problem of power shortage. So the priority then for the first year for Kenyans was, for President Ruto, was how can I reduce the cost of living? The fuel price is going up. Bills for electricity are piling up. How then can he give a priority to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport? That math cannot add up. And then people will always be pointing that the government is not doing that. This government does not know how to work. And just like any government, when you are in government, people don't recognize your advantages. Until then, your term limit is done. At the moment, people are trying to see that Uhuru Kenyatta was somehow better. Umesikia kusema mlevi alikuwa ameona. You've had. But during time yake, tuna refer back. So it could be with different challenges that President William Ruto is facing, is that there's an increased population. The population for now for Kenyans is around 50 plus million. It's not the same population that Uhuru Kenyatta had of 44 million. It was not the same population that Mwai Kibaki had of 30 million. So to manage 30 million people is different with 50 million.
No.
So with high population, resources become scarce. And when they become scarce, competition is very high. So competition can be either fair or unfair. So people can use shortcuts. Others who try to follow the hard way will make it late. So the problem about the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, as the CS has said, the government has given out a tender and they are constructing new terminals so that come 2027 we shall have a fully new international airport that will have backup generators, that will have the modern facilities that are required, that will enable both domestic and international flights at any moment, daytime, nighttime, without having many challenges. But again, challenges will be there. So the current challenge is that we don't have backup and maybe the leakages. But maybe come 2027, challenges will be different. I don't know if we're
Yes, we're on the same page.
so they're just like a relationship. A one-day relationship challenges are different. 1 year. If you go 40 years.
And there's also increase in population. Upon that, yeah, there is an issue there. Anyway, of course, we're also looking forward to seeing the newly constructed terminals as well as an improvement in certain sectors in Kenya. Of course, JKA being part of the faces of Kenya, you know, because it is one of the largest airports in Kenya that receives international flights, you know. Now, we move on to a very interesting matter. So, according to the Kenya Defense Force Act of 2012, if someone uses or wears military gears or falsely represents themselves as a member of the military, they can face a fine of up to 2 million shillings or imprisonment of up to 7 years or both. Now, this is a statement that comes at a time where, for example, as a country, we are in that era of fashion where if we look at cultural events, we see the likes of our president and other people or other ministers dress. You saw how they dress for the Tubongdore festival in Turkana, how they dress for different occasions. And now we go to how they even dressed while planting trees. You know, it's all different. The attires are different. But now we come to a point where an interesting observation was made about members of parliament as well as political leaders in Kenya, inclusive of cabinet secretaries, adorning themselves in military attires for different occasions. Number one, as per your research, as per your knowledge, is it something that should actually be embraced during different occasions in Kenya?
You know, if I've not gotten you wrong, I'll beg your pardon. Were they really wearing military uniform?
No. For planting trees, no. But you've seen different occasions where different CSs, for example, are wearing military uniforms, you know. Case in point, for example, you have the interior CS. I'm sure you've seen him most
So
of the
if
time.
the interior CS with his role falls under the military, him has no problem to wear it.
Now that's what I want to know.
So, you know, the point is the military uniform is different from what actually they wore. Just like we have the NYS uniform. So at times, the NYS uniform can look similar to that of military. But indeed, it's not that military uniform. Just going ahead for you and maybe speaking about what Oscar Sudi wore, that was not a military uniform. Just like we saw many politicians wearing yesterday green uniforms, does not mean that they are military uniform. Just talking about the choice of dress, just recent, I think some 3 months ago, the president has been wearing a kind of outfit, the counter suits, and you've seen many people are buying them. Does it mean that they're wearing what the president should wear? So to that, I think the respect for it, it's really kept. That military, the army uniform is worn by those who are qualified or who have the authority to wear them. But again, what the CSs have been wearing and the leaders can foreshadow of something that might be coming. Yeah.
And most definitely to our viewers, that is how we are ending the Q&A table. Thank you so much for joining our discussions. We are going to see you in the next Q&A table. But meanwhile, feel free to leave your comments on the comment section below, as well as your opinions. Good morning, good afternoon, and good